Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Angela Love-Zaranka, Program Director at Lactation Education Resources.
And I am Sekeita Lewis-Johnson, Accredited Provider Program Director for Lactation Education Resources. Welcome.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. So a little bit of background about me. I have been working in community lactation support for over 30 years. I've worked in a hospital, private practice, and served on a few different boards of directors in lactation land. Sekeita, how about you?
Yeah, so I am a former labor and delivery nurse, and I'm also a board certified lactation consultant and family nurse practitioner, birth doula, and nurse educator. So I wear many hats. I've had the privilege of serving lactating families in the community as well as inside the hospital. And I bring you about 20 years of lactation support and over 25 years as a nurse. So thank you for joining us today as we really talk about all things real regarding the realities of being and becoming an IBCLC.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, such as, where in the world are you participating today in the webinar? Take a look at the interface, which is shown on the screen here. You see that blue arrow, and it provides you with that little area where you can ask your questions or make your comments. So feel free to do so if you are participating today from a laptop computer or a desktop computer. If you're participating from a mobile device, take a look at the green arrow. So at the bottom of the interface is the question mark, and that's where you can ask questions or you can comment. So joining our webinar today is Kim Weber. Kim is an IBCLC and a member of our amazing customer support team. If you make questions or put questions in the question box, Kim will take a look at them, and if she can answer them pretty quickly, she'll go ahead and do so. But she's going to leave a couple for Sekeita and I to answer live. We also have Jill, who is our tech person for today, and she will be helping with any tech issues which you may have. So feel free to type in any question or comment that you have into the chat, and we're happy to answer. If you have any other questions, which we don't quite get to, or if you have to hop off, there is going to be a recording available once this is over. And you can always email us at support@lactationtraining.com. Okay, so let's dive in and take a closer look at what a lactation consultant is and how you can follow your passion and become one. If you decide to become an IBCLC, you will join more than 35,000 IBCLCs in over 130 countries and territories. Credentialing as a lactation consultant is offered by the International Board Certified Lactation Consultant Commission. Take a look at their website, ibclc-commission.org. They have different regional offices depending on where in the world you work or reside. Review the requirements and the pathways to become eligible to take the exam. What do you need to know? Well, the detailed content outline, or also the exam blueprint, also known as the exam blueprint. It's based on surveys of IBCLCs in various practice settings around the globe. The outline covers all of the topic areas and chronological stages that you need to know in your work. LER courses cover the entire detailed content outline, and our courses are approved by LARC, which is the Lactation Education Accreditation and Approval Review Committee. That's the organization that evaluates and approves lactation consultant training courses. Sekeita will review a few questions to ask yourself today. Sekeita?
Thanks, Angela. So before we get started, a couple questions you want to ask yourself is we're going to talk about a lot of things. First of all, let me say that. And we're going to talk about a lot of skills. Sometimes skills, requiring you to touch, but other quote skills requiring you just to have knowledge and counsel. But as we are going through some of these topics today, ask yourself, do I have these skills? And if you don't, then where am I going to acquire these skills? So it may be helpful to write these things down, as more of a reflective practice after you've heard everything we have to say today, and kind of really chew on the bits and pieces that apply to you, and really take a deep dive into planning what your next steps would be to getting the skills that you would necessarily need to become an IBCLC. All right, so what makes an IBCLC? What makes any profession or anything, any skill, is having competency, right? And being competent means that you have the knowledge, it means that you have the skill and the attitude to do it successfully so that you can master it. So what I'm saying is that when you're initially planning to become a lactation consultant, you are entering a field from a more of a novice lens, if you will. You'll be entering with this novice lens with, okay, I've seen basic things, I haven't seen everything, and the goal is to build up on those skills, build up on that professionalism, build up on your knowledge, build up on any clinical opportunity that presents itself, and so that you will become a competent expert. All right. Culturally appropriate, credible care. Most of you probably have heard the term cultural competence or culturally competent. And when you think about being competent, I just said it's the mastery of, right? When you think about that, you have to wonder to yourself if you could ever really master someone else's culture. So I prefer alternative words like culturally appropriate, culturally relevant, those sorts of things, right? When you deliver culturally appropriate care, it truly starts from a lens of cultural humility. And cultural humility is this process. It's a lifelong process, but it's, what, we have to take a look at our own values, our beliefs, and this is something that we have to continuously do, right? Before examining others' people, culture, or their beliefs or their values. And when we also think about cultures, it's important to not lump cultures as this culture does this or this culture does that. We sometimes like to do that. We like to put folks in a box, right? When you think about cultural and anything related to cultural, you have to understand that there are subcultures within cultures, right? And so one of the things in lactation land that I've heard, and I've heard it more than a couple times, is, oh, this set of people, they don't do that, they don't really, it's not within their culture to do this, right? And so it's important that we really unpack when we lump folks in from that type of lens, and that we ask them, hey, tell me about this experience or tell me about that experience, whatever the case may be, not just lactation related, but this is just a life lesson. So the one thing that you want to do is provide that level of care, that cultural humility, being culturally appropriate. Another example is someone needs translation. How are you going to communicate with them? And is the form of communication reliable? Like, are they going to get the information that you're providing, right, through that translating service? So, the thing that really, really can do damage to our profession is to lose credibility. And sometimes we can lose credibility by being inappropriate, culturally inappropriate. When you cause harm because of some inappropriate or assumptions or stereotype or biases, really and truly you lose credibility. Another way to lose credibility is basically answering a question that you don't really have the answer to. Sometimes that happens in lactation land because sometimes when folks ask us questions, we're like, oh yeah, when I breastfed, this happened or that happened. And so, yeah, you'll be good. You want to avoid doing things like that, right? Understanding that just because we've had these wonderful experiences, that may not be the norm. It may not be true. It may not be whatever the case may be. So, when you're asked something and you don't know the answer, it's so important for you to say, you know what? Let me get back to you. And it's important to get back to that person credible in a timely manner, right? It means that you are giving out information that A coincides with the best evidence, and B, you really know what you're talking about. And if those two don't fit, then work on getting the answers so that you're not walking around you know doing damage to the profession, because when one lactation consultant says something, if you lose credibility, it's like, okay, it could translate to others losing credibility as well. Policy advisor, creator, and advocate. So, a couple things we do as IBCLCs is we advise on policy and we help to create policies. And so, from a standpoint of clinical care, remember, we're all able to do these things. We're all stakeholders when it comes to giving our perspective on policies, giving perspectives on language. However, there are some folks who that is their expertise. They actually go to higher education to learn how to write policies, to create policies that hopefully don't end with unintended harmful consequences. So, language is everything. However, even if you don't have that education, the secondary education to or the to create these policies, just remember that you're there in every space as an advocate. You're there like working to say, hey, this is what I see. This is what my family's experience. This policy would be helpful, or no, this policy would be harmful. So, being a stakeholder is another crucial thing and important thing that we do to show our public support of promoting, protecting, and supporting lactation. I don't know if you all are seeing that sun. I think this looks better, but it seems like I was getting, yeah, okay. We'll keep it like that. Sorry about that. All right. All right. Problem solver and researcher. So I just talked about when you don't know something, you got to look it up. That's kind of how you solve problems a little bit, but it's a little bit deeper than that. Problem solving is about 90% of what we do. Understanding that when families seek us for care, they are seeking care because they have some concerns. And so when they call us for support, it's important that we understand that we don't frame whatever their question is from a one size fits all framework. Most times, one size never fits all, right? So, we really should be problem solving from the individual lens of that family. What are they sharing with you? And then putting the pieces together so that we can help create a plan to help them solve it or guide them along the way. Researcher also involves looking up information. Also, we need researchers in lactation. There are some published researchers that actually do research, right? And so this is another component, another part of being an IBCLC as professionals. It's to us to deliver evidence-based care, the highest level of evidence, right? And that not just to be making up these things as we go along, right? And so understanding that that's a huge part of our role actually helps also in your professional development. It means that you will be reading journals. It means that you will be keeping up with the latest research. So maybe you don't write the research, but you definitely are reading it to make sure that you are staying up to date. high-level lactation care that is skilled. And I put these two together because it's so important. When we think about lactation support and care, IBCLC should be able to deliver skilled, high-level lactation care. And when I say that, I'm talking about not just the basic education. I'm just going to go in the room, I'm just going to teach, because that's a lactation educator. Or I am going to just go room to room and just latch all the babies. If you really think that, that's usually not the case, because babies don't just want to eat when we walk in the room. I am talking about cases that are uncomplicated to the complicated, meaning someone who's in the ICU, who's on life support, who made it clear that they wanted to provide human milk for their baby. Are you able to think through how to get the milk expressed as often as it need to? Is the milk safe from a medication standpoint? Do the nurses where the client may be residing or on that unit, are they familiar with how to pump? There's so many things. Cleaning the pump parts. A person that's on life support can't clean their pump parts. Storing the milk, right? So thinking about the different levels that IBCLCs will be called to know about. So a lot of times there's lots of information when you're going through your courses, some college courses and then some of the other courses, and you're like, do I really need to know all of this information? Do I need to know about the cranial nerves? Of course you do. Do I need to know about the brain? Of course you do, because that is what sets you apart. And with the skill, with having the knowledge, then you can build up on your skill. And again, being put in situations where you don't lean away from complicated situations, but you lean in, because as an IBCLC, you are the one that they're calling as the feeding expert. Essential and timely. So one of the things we learned during the pandemic is that essential became a buzzword. It was all about essential healthcare workers. And one of the things that happened is some lactation consultants, they got a little left out of what is essential. But I'm here to tell you that we are essential. I'm here to tell you when many places were shutting down, there were community lactation consultants out here being essential, out here seeing clients, seeing patients, doing telehealth, doing all the things that we needed to get families food security, because it truly is. In emergent situations, it is a food security issue. And so we are essential, and it's important for us to be timely. When someone calls for assistance in the first few days and they can't get an appointment for a week or two, that can really pretty much break their lactation journey. And also, it could also cause lack of confidence. It can cause when I say lack of confidence, a lack of confidence in healthcare or allied healthcare workers. And so it's so important that, when families are calling us, that if we can't do it, we have another credible resource that's able to provide that timely support. So if you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to work in tandem, I'm going to work solo, please think about your networks. Think about who you have in your networks. Think about other IBCLCs. Even think about other lactation specialists like CBS, Certified Breastfeeding Specialists, who can provide perhaps if it's just maybe education, or maybe it's just, I just need a little confidence with latching, right? Not everyone needs an IBCLC, but when they do, it is important that we show up, and we show up in a timely manner. All right. Being a trusted, collaborative care partner. I love this phrase so much because it assumes that you are collaborating with your client, that you're not the center, you are not the decision maker, you are a collaborator, right? So remember, it's the families and their partners, their goals, their fears, it's their barriers that takes precedence over your goals for them. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that yes, we know recommendation says exclusive breastfeeding and human milk feeding for at least the first 6 months. We know those things, right? But it's important that we honor those, but that we still talk about them, but we have to really also understand some of the barriers, systemic barriers, also some of the other concerns and fears and personal barriers that may be impacting your family. So, we have to walk into every situation and understanding that we are in partnership, we are in agreement that when someone seeks care, that we approach it in a way that we are not overstepping our boundaries. And truly, that's how you become trusted. In all honesty, you become trusted to do no harm, to be reliable, trusted, to say, I see you as a person. I see you and we're in this together. I'm not higher than you. There's no hierarchy. You can trust me because I'm collaborating to do what is best for you. So, what am I saying? When you go into clinical situations and relationships, if you go in assuming I'm the expert, I know all about this, I'm going to tell you how to do this here. I got the spill. I get 5 minutes of my time, or I'm just going to latch this baby. You are going to lose trust. You're going to lose trust, right? And again, if you go in touching someone without permission to touch, every single time. Consent is every single time you're getting ready or you feel the need to touch, right? Those are ways to lose trust. So, being that collaborative spirit, practicing from that collaborative frame is truly a way to gain the trust of your clients and your community, as well as other clinicians around you. All right, person-centered care. So I've talked about culture, I've talked about care, communication, and collaboration. And if you haven't noticed, the person is the center of all of this. However, I don't define what person-centered care is. The Institute of Medicine has defined it as providing care that is respectful of and responsive to individual patients' preferences, needs, and values, and ensuring that patient values guide all clinical decisions. So there's that. So remember when I said we're collaborating? Again, we're not collaborating because we're on a time clock. We're collaborating because this person, we need to be able to understand their needs. We need to be able to understand their care. We need to be their culture, their communication, their style of communication, and therefore we can serve in ways that are not harmful. All right. So I began with two questions. I'm going to end with a few more questions. And these are also questions you may want to write down. So Angela's going to talk a lot about the pathways, the three pathways. So as you are listening to Angela give all the great knowledge, write down what pathway is your pathway. So key in and listen so you'll know some key differences between the three, right? Also ask yourself, what does your local market look like? What's the market analysis? Is there a saturation of lactation consultants where it's just full? It's not, but I'm really telling you to really dive in to see how lactation consultants are clinically working in your area. Also, there's lots of clinical hours that will need to be achieved. So you have to think about, how does this fit into my life? How does this fit into my family? If I have to go take college courses, how many years realistically will it take me to accomplish these goals? So after today, really reflect on this, really think about this, and hopefully you will begin your journey, or maybe you're almost halfway through your journey, but we're hoping that answering your questions today will get you to the best start. Angela, take it away.
Thanks, Sekeita. Okay, that's great. So yes, we're going to talk about the different pathways and what you need for each one. And so the process can seem a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to make it simpler for all of us to sort of break it up into the individual different components. As you're listening, remember that you don't have to go out and do each one of these things today. We are here to help you with every single step of the process. So the first thing you need to do is choose a pathway. We'll come back to this in just a minute. Each pathway has three components. The first is education, the second, clinical hours, and the third, exam prep. Okay, so education, health sciences education. It is the typical education for health providers. There are 8 post-secondary or university level courses and 6 general education subjects. You'll find a full list of each of the 14 subjects on the IBCLC Commission's website. You can search for it, or you can find a link in the resource document attached to this webinar. The 8 university level courses are, and you don't need to write these down at this moment, but they are biology, anatomy, physiology, infant and child growth and development, introduction to clinical research, nutrition, psychology or counseling skills or communication skills, and finally, sociology or cultural sensitivity or cultural anthropology. They can be online or in person, as long as the institution is accredited to provide the learning. Now, if you took any of these courses, let's say 20 years ago, during when you were potentially at university, that's fine, they count. LER partners with Walden University to provide the basic courses. Walden is online and they have chosen the courses to best fit the Commission's requirements. The 6 general education courses are medical documentation, medical terminology, occupational safety and security for health professionals, professional ethics for health professionals, universal safety precautions and infection control, and basic life support. 5 of the 6 general ed courses can be taken through LER. The only one you're going to have to search for is basic life support. In many countries, there's an in-person skills check for this training. Now, I have heard of some organizations providing this training completely online. It's important to check with your local resources. The guide from IBLCE provides general descriptions for the typical courses in this subject area. Please keep in mind that the IBCLC is international. The names used in their document to describe the courses may not exactly fit the description of the course at your accredited educational institution. It's okay. Just note that there are broad terms which are used because there is no one universal description for, let's say, what a course in clinical research might cover. Now, why are these 14 courses required? The IBCLC is a standalone credential, meaning you do not need another certification, degree, or license to practice as an IBCLC. Once you pass the exam, you will be an allied health professional. The courses will actually help to prepare you for your career as well as to pass the exam. Now, the second thing is lactation-specific education. LER has you covered here too. The education should be comprehensive and cover the detailed content outline. The Commission requires at least 90 hours of lactation education and 5 hours of communication skills. Our 5-hour course is specific to lactation and breastfeeding care to help you in your practice as a lactation consultant. The third component is lactation-specific clinical experience. This can be in-person consultations, telephone consultations, or online breastfeeding and lactation care that supports breastfeeding families. It also includes lactation assistance to pregnant and breastfeeding clients and lactation education to families and/or professionals. These hours are to be obtained within the 5 years immediately prior to applying for the exam. So how many clinical hours do you need? That depends on your pathway. Hope you're still with me. Okay, here we go. So clinical hours, as I said, need to be accrued in the 5 years before you apply for the exam. Pathway 1 is for health professionals and those who provide breastfeeding support through an IBCLC recognized breastfeeding support counselor organization. Healthcare professionals, according to IBCLC, includes physicians, nurses, midwives, dietitians, physical therapists or physiotherapists, speech pathologists, and others. Breastfeeding support counselors include those accredited through organizations such as Lactation Education Resources, La Leche League International, the Australian Breastfeeding Association. Now, Pathway 2 applicants must complete a comprehensive academic program in human lactation and breastfeeding through an accredited university. Their education has both the didactic and clinical components, and they require 300 supervised hours working with breastfeeding families. I believe there's only about 7 or 8 of these programs throughout the entire world. Pathway 3 is a structured mentorship program between an IBCLC and the applicant. Now, the IBCLC, or if there are several, all of the IBCLCs need to be in good standing with IBLCE. Those who choose this pathway must have their program pre-approved by IBLCE prior to beginning their clinical hours. So now for those of you who may have breastfed, chest-fed, or provided human milk for your baby, the hours you spent nursing, pumping, and helping your friends unfortunately doesn't count towards the clinical hours. Now, while 500 or 1,000 hours seems like a lot, there's a really good reason why. Each candidate needs to have the clinical skills so they can provide competent care as an IBCLC. If it's any consolation, the number of hours used to be a lot more. I've known IBCLCs who needed anywhere from 2,500 to 8,000 clinical hours just to take the exam. Now, candidates who are applying for the exam through Pathway 1 need at least 1,000 hours. For the candidate who's also a healthcare provider, the hours can be done in a hospital or a birth center, a clinic, a lactation care clinic or practice, or through independent practice as a licensed or registered healthcare professional in a non-healthcare setting. For breastfeeding support counselors from an IBLCE recognized organization, their hours can be earned in person or online. The location and type of support depends on the criteria provided by the recognized organization. The hours need to be counted on an hour-by-hour basis. Now, there's 2 important things about the clinical hours. 1, it's important for you to document the hours as you accrue them. Be very detailed in case IBLCE chooses to audit your application to take the exam. They may want to see documentation such as a spreadsheet or other document where you counted your hours. And the second point here is that the 1,000 hours do not need to be directly supervised. Note that LER does have a program for those of you who are not already affiliated with the breastfeeding support organization. The LER Hours program offers you a way to gather those 1,000 hours in your community. Now, Pathway 3 requires 500 hours of clinical experience. It's best done in a busy practice setting where you can work with many breastfeeding, chest-feeding people and those providing human milk for their babies each day, such as a hospital or clinic setting. The hours count towards the 500 only when you're actually working with families. Observation hours do not count. Clinical experience is graduated. That is, it starts with observation, then doing tasks under supervision, then completing the tasks independently with the IBCLC nearby to ask questions and discuss situations. LER has an internship program with many sites around the United States. Reach out to support@lactationtraining.com and we can connect you with our clinical internship director, Amy Black, to determine if we have a site in your area. If not, we can give you suggestions on how you can work with your local hospital to facilitate an internship site. Now, one thing Amy wanted me to mention in this webinar is that you can't start to count your hours in the internship requirement until both you and the IBCLC are comfortable with your working independently. Most interns will spend about 75 hours in orientation before they can begin to accrue the 500 hours. Or you can take a look in your community to find a willing internship site or mentors. You may need to reach out to several folks to find someone with the time, experience, and capacity to agree to be your mentor. It's important to find a good fit. Talk to others who've been through Pathway 3 to find successful strategies in finding a good mentor. A lot of people are asking whether or not they can accrue clinical hours via telehealth since the pandemic. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is paraphrased from IBCLC documents. IBCLC will allow the use of technology if certain parameters are met. You'll need to pay attention to the privacy rules and the Code of Professional Conduct, as well as the clinical competencies for IBCLCs. At LER, there are two ways to gather your lactation-specific education. One is the Lactation Consultant Training Program, which is the full 95 hours front to back. The other is either core or bridge. They are designed to meet your education needs depending on your background and previous lactation training. So first, the comprehensive course is called the Lactation Consultant Training Program. LCTP is 90+ hours, which is eligible for CERPS, CME, and nursing contact hours. It's intended for those who do not have any lactation education and know they want to become an IBCLC. We have more than 35 of the most knowledgeable, experienced instructors who are practicing lactation consultants, researchers, and authors who teach in our courses, including Sekeita and me. Our classes are economical. You can view them on a variety of devices, such as your computer, tablet, or phone. They're optimized for a computer, but they can be reviewed later when you're on the go. We have been educating people in person and online since 1990. We update our course information with the latest peer-reviewed evidence on a regular schedule, but we'll update sooner as new evidence emerges. Have a question for the instructor? You can send an email to our support forum, and we have IBCLCs available to answer your questions. Want to discuss a concept with fellow students? We're discussing innovative ways for people to connect. Stay tuned for more information. Upon completion of the 95-hour course, you're eligible to take the Certified Breastfeeding Specialist exam. The exam is included in the price. Once you pass, you are a Certified Breastfeeding Specialist. This is to recognize you for the level of education you have attained. With this certification, you can begin to collect your clinical hours towards the IBCLC exam. If you're unsure where to start, or if you already have some lactation-specific education hours, then we have our core or bridge programs to meet your needs. They have the same advantages as the LCTP course. Our initial course is called Core because it will provide you with the core lactation education you need to understand what it means to begin supporting the normal course of breastfeeding. It's 52+ hours of online education. It covers the basics such as anatomy and physiology, infant growth and development, supporting the preterm baby, medications and breastfeeding, and many more. At the end of the course is a Certified Breastfeeding Specialist exam. The Bridge course is ideal for people who have the basic lactation education components and they need an extra 45 hours to qualify for the exam. Topics in our Bridge course include legal and ethical concerns for the lactation consultant, infant feeding and disasters, breastfeeding the infant with medical challenges, case studies, and clinical skills videos. If you're not sure where to start, and you're new to the profession, I would suggest the core course, just to get your feet wet a little bit and see if lactation support is something that fits your passion. Now, I know that these requirements seem like a lot. LER is here for you every step of the way. If you have any questions about the pathways that don't get answered today, please be sure to reach out to our friendly customer support department. Many of our team are IBCLCs and they know the process inside and out. LER has 3 ways for you to earn your education, depending on your goals and where you are right now in the process. If you have questions about what would be right for you, again, our customer support team is here to help. If you're not a healthcare professional working directly with mothers and babies, getting those hours can feel like a challenge. We have 2 programs for you, one for Pathway 1 and one for Pathway 3 students. And when you're ready to take the exam, LER has you covered. We offer two versions of our very popular exam prep course. Both use LER QBank, which is a comprehensive system which includes practice exams, photo flashcards, anatomy flashcards, a study schedule, and more. For those who take our 95-hour course, we'll include a discount to our exam prep course as well. Now, our 90-hour course, as well as Core and Bridge, is available in Spanish. Capacitación en Lactancia is our website, which provides the same high-quality education found on LER in Spanish. At LER, we believe that access to high-quality lactation education should not be limited by those who live in countries with high incomes. We recognize that in many parts of the world, the relative purchasing power of a local currency may make the cost of lactation education inaccessible. As part of our commitment to increasing access to lactation training worldwide, our pricing is adjusted according to the student's country of residence. In alignment with our continued commitment to diversity, LER is proud to announce our Rising Tide Lactation Equity Scholarship Program, which is designed to increase the number of Black and Hispanic and Latinx IBCLCs in the United States. We recognize that one of the greatest obstacles to entry to the field is access, specifically demonstrated by financial barriers. LER will remove that barrier for either a Rising Tide scholarship winner or Juntos Triunfamos. And we alternate these scholarships every year. Our Juntos Triunfamos scholarship winner will be announced in the next few weeks. You can find out more information about our scholarships at lactationtraining.com/rising tide. Our team is here to help you now and in the future. We have tech support open 7 days a week. You can get your questions answered by experts in the field, and we will provide you ongoing support for the next steps in your lactation career. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time today. Now, Sekeita, what questions do people have for us?
So this first question is a two-part question, and it reads, what are some ways you recommend building your network? And the second part, what are some resources you recommend using to better understand your local market? And in parentheses, I'm in the US. Yeah, those are some great questions. I think I'll start with just saying, building your network is like building relationships, right? And so if you don't have a relationship, one of the things that you may want to try is really attending local coalitions. And if you have those in your area, or local support groups, and also kind of doing an assessment on, are there lactation consultants in your area? I believe you can visit United States Lactation Consultant Association, and you can find IBCLCs in your area, in your local area. I think that's one way, but I'll leave space for Angela to add on to some of the things that she would recommend.
I think that the U.S. Lactation Consultant Association is one good way. The International Lactation Consultant Association is also another good resource. And each country has their own national lactation organization. You may also want to take a look at lactation support. And so taking a look at some of the not-for-profit or charity organizations in your community may also be helpful. La Leche League International is one that's been around for over 60 years. That may be an option. You mentioned that you're in the United States, and the United States Breastfeeding Committee is another way to find out what are the resources potentially in your community and in your area. If someone asked about Canada, there's the Canadian Lactation Consultant Association. There's the Lactation Consultants of Great Britain. There's, all sorts of organizations around the world. So do take a look and see, do a search, maybe even contact some of the local hospitals to find out who do they refer to. And that may give you some ideas on that aspect, on where you can find folks.
Thanks, Angela. The next question is, do volunteer hours count?
So absolutely, the time that you spend, the clinical hours, accruing your clinical hours, can either be volunteer or paid. And it depends upon the internship site and or what your quote unquote day job is. And if you have access to lactating folks in your general day-to-day and in your general practice. So there's that. Another question had to do similar, how online support hours are counted. So we have our hours program, and our hours program, if you are a certified breastfeeding specialist, our hours program does allow for online lactation support and education. So that could either be through teaching prenatal classes, it could be teaching a back to work class, it could be offering a support group, it could be, any number of ways. And so indeed, online hours can be counted through the hours program. That is a separate process. And so once you've gotten your CBS, you can apply to our hours program, you complete a couple of case studies, and then you can start to count your hours.
Thanks, Angela. There's another question. What are average salaries, incomes for IBCLCs in the U.S.? Will I just go into debt to get this credential and not be able to support myself with it? That is actually a valid question, and that's one of the why I recommended doing a market analysis on the IBCLCs in your local area. What do they make, right? I can tell you based on cost of living in different geographical areas, even across this nation, the pays are very, very different. And so I don't know the part of will you go into debt, but what I will say is that's one of the reflective questions to figure out how much does everything cost and is it feasible for you at this time? And what are your plans? Do you plan to work private practice? Do you plan to work in a hospital setting? Do you plan to work in a community setting? And if so, if you plan to work private practice, you got to think about your overhead cost. You got to think about your time. A lot of folks don't include time into building their business, right? So there's so many things to consider. I would hope that you wouldn't go into debt. I would, but again, one of the things I say during exam review is proper preparation prevents poor performance. The 5 P's, and that's just, ensuring that you've had a time to consider all of the things. And that's why I said reflecting is so important, and doing your own homework in your own area is so important.
Great point, Sekeita. That's awesome. Okay, so someone else is asking, I love this question. So what does ongoing support that LER provides to IBCLCs that go through the program look like? What else differentiates LER from other programs? And so I think the question could be, what support does LER provide to CBSs? So indeed, for those who take our courses, we are available to answer your questions. I want to say we probably have about 7 or 8 IBCLCs on staff. We have other staff members who are either peer support counselors, or they're either peer support counselors or other health professionals. And so they understand what it means to be an IBCLC. And so I have been known to, someone wanted to do a prenatal education class and wanted to run their curriculum past someone. And so we took a look at it and gave them a few suggestions. Someone else wanted to write a letter as far as why they should employ a CBS and asked us if we could take a look at it. And so we did and gave a few suggestions. I've had several calls from people from CBSs who, and this is something which is important, they sort of are going to be supporting a family. They walk into the visit and all of a sudden they realize that they're in over their head. And it's not the, if you ever get over your head, it is when you get over your head. And so they could reach out to us. We would strategize, talk about the things that they did need to provide. There have been a few occasions where I say, okay, where's the IBCLC in your community? Because that's, you need to know who you can pitch to, and having that information early is something which is really helpful, and potentially collaborating with folks to say, hey, listen, I'm in the community, I'm offering, I'm supporting the normal course of breastfeeding. If I hit something that I really don't know, can I refer clients to you? And really starting that relationship now is something which can be very helpful. So indeed, Sekeita, I know you offer a lot of support and
Yes.
mentorship to folks too.
Listen, I was about to jump in because I think that the last question struck me. What else differentiates LER from other programs? And I will say that when I thought about that, I'm like, whoa, there's lots of things. But one of the things that I will say, and this is all about keeping it real, so I'm just going to keep it real. We have commitment standards for our students that is on our website, and it is about our commitment to not just diversity in thought, but also diversity and equity in action. Those are action words. So when folks reach out to LER about something that can be perceived as problematic, it gets fixed. Um, and that's the one thing is that, like for me, I don't know about anybody else. This is speaking for me, and this is not a reflection of LER, but I won't work for a company that's performative. And I can say that in my time with LER, Angela, why are you laughing? I said I was keeping it real. This is keeping it
I
real,
know.
right?
Yes, 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 yes.
You're sitting
So
at the
true.
edge of your seat. What is she about to say? But it's important for me that though the commitments were written with intention and meaning behind it, and we act upon it, not just with our students, but with each other. And so I think that's what differentiates LER from other programs. Granted, I've worked for other programs, I've taught for other programs, and hands down, I would say the level and the quality and the attention that goes toward building our lessons. I'm the person who starts it off with our instructors. And so, it's just important to me that as a learner myself, and I say a lifelong learner, I want quality education. If I'm paying for it, I want that, right? And so the integrity part of me says, yes, this is what we have to deliver. And so I hope that answers your question, in a nutshell, but there's a lot of things that differentiates LER, but I
there
will
are.
digress.
Well, but I think it's you and I, I think, really we've got such a commitment to each other and to removing some of the barriers. And we don't want you to feel like you're out there on your own because you're not. Two of our customer support folks are IBCLCs, right? We've got people who work in our content department who are IBCLCs. We've got IBCLCs everywhere, or some sort of like lactation support person. Oh, what were you going to say, Sekeita?
I have to just add this. And our
And
lessons, every lessons get reviewed by 7 IBCLCs. So all of our lessons before they go live, they get reviewed by 7 reviewers, content reviewers that look at the content from their own lens, their lived experiences, and we take their feedback before it gets published. If something needs to be changed, edited, it's done. So I did want to add
mhm.
that a little bit.
I'm glad you did. And that really gets to the point of you and I. Your background is in nursing, my background's in the community, right? I came up through a breastfeeding support organization. And so the two of us, really these different lived experiences that we have a lot of commonalities, but still it's that differences that really helps to make us stronger. And it's something where when we're reviewing our content, we want to make sure that it's things that are actually workable and livable, not something which is theoretical. We want to make sure that it's real, our content, and that it's backed by evidence, that it's done that it meets the rigor of our accreditors, and that it includes those lived experiences and those voices of people. So indeed. Okay, good. We can
I think that
stop
was
here.
my
We can
favorite
keep going.
question out
Me
of
too.
all the questions we've ever been asked. I felt like I was on an interview. Thank you for that.
That's a good one. Yes, an interview. Okay, good. So someone else is asking a question. What advice do you have for people looking to change careers outside of healthcare? Is it possible to complete certification part-time? And they said, though, pathway 3. So it is possible to do it part-time, right?
Yeah, I did it part time. I actually, as a nurse, I did pathway 3. For
Mhm,
me, I really wanted, I should say, that clinical experience alongside another IBCLC.
mhm.
And I worked. I was working, I believe, full time at the time. So, and I had children. It was a stretch, but I did complete it. I will say, with that type of circumstances, circumstance plan on it taking the 5 years. I mean, like if you're working full time, you got family, and you're doing the pathway 3. So these are just real things to consider, right? But it's doable. It is all doable.
The only thing I would say is that if you're going through a Pathway 3 program, there may be some requirements that the mentor or that clinical site may have of you, and they may have expectations as far as the frequency that you need to be in and actually accruing your hours. Because the thing is that with the clinical internship site, the nice thing about you supporting them is that you can go in and, like, let's say, for example, set up a pump in a hospital room for a patient who just delivered a baby prematurely. Once you're comfortable and competent and they feel comfortable with you doing it, they'll say, hey, can you go into that room and set up a pump, and then instruct the parent on how to use it and the frequency and everything else. So if they're like counting on you, then it's important to make sure that everything is very clear in this, sort of agreement between the two of you or between the institution as well as yourself, so that they're aware of the frequency of when you can be there. So that's just one little piece there. If you're going Pathway 3, Pathway 1, it's a little bit easier, especially if you can accrue those hours during your regular day-to-day job.
All right, Angela, it says, how many times per year is the exam offered? In terms of the 1,000 hours, is a spreadsheet sufficient, or is there a formal form or outline needed to be completed? So the exam is offered twice a year. And as far as doing your hours, yes, a spreadsheet is sufficient for doing them. Absolutely.
And so IBCLC, the IBCLC, the commission actually has a spreadsheet on their website so you can document your hours. The nice thing is that our hours program, we have an extra spreadsheet where not only do you count your hours, one by one, but also we have tied it to the things that you actually need to know in order to sit the exam. And I'm not going to get too much into detail. You'll have to join the hours program in order to get access to that spreadsheet. But not only will it help you to determine, what you've seen along the way and sort of like give you that record for yourself, but it will also then help you once it's time to sit the exam, because that's a record that you can use in order to see what your progress is. So there we go.
There's a question, how do we book in for the exam for April? Just be real careful with this. In order to book to sit for the exam, you have to have completed all of the requirements to apply to sit for the exam. And there are very strict dates in which that occurs. I haven't looked forward to this calendar. So Angela, do you know the date? Yeah, go ahead.
The exam window for the April 2024 exam is open now, and I believe it closes in early January. I want to say like January 2nd or the 4th or something. So you need to have everything done before you apply for the exam. So it is offered twice a year. The application window is open for several weeks, but about 4 months before, 4 or 5 months before you're going to sit the exam. So it's not something which is you can sit the exam and take it tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. So do make sure that you're planning when you want to sit the exam.
Yes, and then another question about the exam. If you don't pass the exam the first time, can you retake it? Yes,
You can.
you can. I know someone who sat 3 times. Third time was a charm for her, and she really wanted it, and she is really successful now doing the thing that she is passionate about. So yeah.
You can retake the exam, the IBCLC exam. They've actually changed the guidelines, I believe, and I don't know them right off the top of my head, but I do believe that if you do not pass it either once or twice, you need to I believe, wait a period of time before you can take it again. And so I think that's to allow for people to actually get the experience that they need and that clinical information that they need, and maybe additional didactic education in order to actually take the exam and pass it, because they want you to be successful as well. And as a note, a strong majority of people who take it for the first time pass that test. So I want to say the number is probably around 80%, I think. high 70s, low 80s. So chances are you'll pass if you're prepared. Okay,
Are
good.
there accommodations for people with disabilities on the exam, extended time, etc.? I'm going to go on mute because my dog just decided to get loud.
Yes, there is. There are accommodations. You would need to reach out to IBCLC in order to find out what you need to do to apply for those accommodations. And so be careful because it is real, and they will provide you with some accommodations, but maybe not all the ones that you'd like. So make sure that you check that out before you apply to sit the exam. Okay, great. I think we covered all of them, don't you, Sekeita?
I think so. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. This has been so fun. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us and best wishes on your journey. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, concerns, or needs.
Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.